Commander Hyanwu pressed his palm against the cold metal wall of the communications chamber.
Ow.
The massive beacon tower stretched high above him, its crystalline core flickering with the last traces of azure light. For 300 years, this ancient human technology had sent signals across the galaxy, calling out to anyone who might be listening. Now, after centuries of faithful service, it was finally dying. "Sir, power levels are dropping to critical," reported Lieutenant Soman, her voice barely above a whisper. The young Zelthani officer had never seen the beacon at full strength, but even she understood what this moment meant. Around them, the other technicians worked in silence, their multiple eyes fixed on readouts that showed the inevitable decline. Hanwu walked slowly around the central console, watching numbers fall with each passing second. The beacon had been humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy before they vanished, connected thousands of worlds, allowing species separated by vast distances to share knowledge and trade. But the humans who built it had disappeared 3 centuries ago, leaving only ruins and legends behind. "Remember the old stories about the builders?" Solomon asked quietly, using the ancient name for humans. "My grandmother used to say they would return when the galaxy needed them most." "Fairy tales," Hyanwu replied, but his voice lacked conviction. He had heard those stories too. Every child in Coalition space knew about the mysterious Terrans who had given them the stars before vanishing without explanation. Some said they had been destroyed by a great war. Others claimed they had simply moved beyond the galaxy's edge. But most believed what the Coalition Council taught, that humanity was extinct. Nothing more than a footnote in galactic history. The beacon's light pulsed once more, then faded to nothing. The chamber fell into darkness, except for the emergency lighting that cast long shadows across the walls. 300 years of continuous operation had finally ended. "Signaled the Coalition Council," Hyanwu commanded, his words echoing in the sudden silence. "The human extinction protocol is now complete. Remove all Earth references from our star charts. Update all databases to reflect humanity's official extinction status." Soman hesitated before activating her communicator. "Sir, what if the stories are true? What if they're still out there?" Hyanwu looked at her with tired eyes. "Then they've had 3 centuries to contact us. If humans were still alive, they would have responded to our signals long ago." The young officer nodded reluctantly and began transmitting the final report. Across Coalition space, bureaucrats would file the necessary paperwork. Historians would close their books on the human chapter of galactic history. Teachers would stop telling stories about the mysterious builders, who had once united the stars. But in the darkness beyond the galaxy's edge, something stirred. Deep in the asteroid fields of the outer rim, automated monitoring stations detected the beacon's failure. Ancient sensors, built with human precision and patience, registered the end of the signal they had been waiting for. Computer systems that had slept for centuries began powering up with quiet efficiency. The message that launched from these hidden stations was simple and encrypted. Package delivered. Come home. It traveled through fold space at speeds that would have amazed Coalition scientists. Signal reached listening posts hidden in nebulae, on rogue planets drifting between stars, and in the hearts of dead suns. Each station received the message, confirmed its authenticity, passed it along to the next relay point, on a world so distant that Coalition maps had never recorded its existence. Admiral Minho stood in the command center of a vast facility carved into living rock. The message appeared on his screen, and he smiled for the first time in decades. Around him, thousands of technicians began their work with practiced efficiency. "Signal all fleet commanders," Minho ordered. "Phase 1 is complete. Begin phase." To immediately, throughout the hidden facility, lights began activating in sections that had been dark for generations. Massive doors opened to reveal ship bays filled with vessels unlike anything in Coalition space. These ships bore no resemblance to the crude human technology found in museums. They were sleek, powerful, and beautiful in their alien design. Back on Kepler 44 to B, Hyanwu filed his final report about the beacon. He wrote carefully about the end of humanity's last gift to the galaxy, not knowing that he was actually announcing the beginning of something far greater. The beacon had never been about communication with the dead human homeworld. It had been a timer, counting down to the moment when humanity's true children would emerge from the shadows in the depths of space. The first human ships began moving toward Coalition territory. They had been waiting for 3 centuries, watching and preparing. The galaxy had forgotten them, but they had never forgotten the galaxy. They had seen how their gifts had been perverted, how their dreams of unity had become tools of oppression. The last beacon had faded. But humanity was about to remind the galaxy why they had once been called the Builders. They were coming home, and they were bringing gifts that would change everything. Captain J1 rubbed his tired eyes and stared at the sensor display for the 3rd time. The readings made no sense. His cargo hauler had detected massive engine signatures moving through the asteroid field. But when he looked again, there was nothing there, just empty space and floating rocks. "Captain, are you seeing this?" asked his navigator, a grizzled Korthok named Greth. The alien's 4 arms worked frantically over his control panel, trying to make sense of the impossible data. "I see it, but I don't believe it," J1 muttered. The signatures had appeared for exactly 3 seconds before vanishing completely. Whatever had been out there was huge, bigger than any Coalition battleship. But Coalition ships didn't move that fast or disappear that cleanly. This was the 4th report this month. Merchant captains across the Outer Rim were talking about ghost ships in hushed voices at trading posts. Ships that appeared on sensors but couldn't be seen. Engine signatures that defied known physics. Strange lights moving between the stars. The Coalition Navy dismissed these reports as space madness, the kind of hallucinations that happen to crews who spent too long in the void. But J1 had been flying cargo routes for 20 years, and he knew the difference between tired eyes and real sensor contacts. On the agricultural world of New Decia, Dr. Sujin knelt in a wheat field, studying patterns that shouldn't exist. The crops had been flattened in perfect geometric shapes overnight. The local farmers blamed wild animals, but Sujin knew better. Animals didn't create mathematical formulas in grain fields. She photographed everything before Coalition security arrived to confiscate her research. The symbols were precise, almost artistic in their complexity. They reminded her of something she had seen in old archaeological texts about human ruins. But she couldn't quite remember what. That night, Sujin transmitted her findings to underground networks across the galaxy, which uploaded the photos to secret forums where believers still discussed the old stories about humanity. Within hours, responses flooded in from dozens of worlds. The symbols matched ancient human mathematical constants found in ruins throughout Coalition space. The same patterns appeared in the architecture of abandoned human cities, in the design of their old technology, even in the structure of the beacon that had just died on Kepler 4-4b. On the mining world of Zarian 7, Foreman Dongman discovered that 3 of his excavation robots had been reprogrammed overnight. The machines now moved in strange patterns, digging perfect spirals instead of the straight lines they were supposed to follow. When technicians tried to reset them, the robots displayed messages in an ancient human script that no one could read. Similar incidents were happening across Coalition space. On the ocean world of Aquatica, fishing boats reported seeing lights moving beneath the waves in formations that spelled out human numbers. On the desert planet of Sandros, nomads found their water wells surrounded by symbols carved into the rock with impossible precision. The Coalition government tried to suppress these reports, but the stories spread faster than they could contain them. In the underground networks, believers began connecting the dots. The incidents weren't random. They were following a pattern, appearing first in systems that had once been human colonies. Elder Yanho, keeper of the old stories on Kepler 4-4b, smiled as he read the reports flowing through his secret communication channels. His grandmother had told him this would happen. She had lived through the early days after humanity's disappearance, when the Coalition first formed to fill the power vacuum left behind. The Builders never left, she had whispered to him as a child. They just stepped back into the shadows to watch what we would do with their gifts.
Right.
And when we proved ourselves unworthy, they would return to set things right. The old Zelthani had kept detailed records of every human ruin, every piece of abandoned technology, every story passed down through generations. He had spent his life waiting for signs that humanity was still out there. And now those signs were everywhere, in the capital city of New Geneva. Coalition Intelligence Director Tehan reviewed the classified reports with growing unease. The incidents were accelerating. What had started as isolated events was becoming a galaxy-wide phenomenon. His best analysts couldn't explain the technology being used or identify who was behind it. "Sir, we're detecting unusual energy readings from abandoned human facilities," reported his assistant, Lieutenant Hay-1. "Sites that have been dormant for centuries are suddenly showing power signatures." Tehan felt a chill run down his spine. The abandoned human bases were scattered across dozens of worlds left behind when humanity vanished. They had been thoroughly explored and found to contain nothing but empty rooms and dead machines. But now, sensors were detecting activity in facilities that should have been completely powerless. "Double the security around all human archaeological sites," he ordered, "and prepare a full briefing for the Coalition Council. Something is happening, and we need to be ready for it." But even as he spoke, Tehan knew they were already too late. The signs were clear to anyone who knew how to look. Humanity had never truly left the galaxy. They had been waiting, watching, and preparing. The whispers in the dark were growing louder, and soon the galaxy would learn what the builders had been planning for 3 centuries. The ghost ships were just the beginning. The derelict vessel appeared in Centauri space without warning, materializing from the void like a ghost from humanity's forgotten past. The used Prometheus hung silently among the stars, its hull scarred but intact after 3 centuries of absence. Coalition patrol ships immediately surrounded it, their weapons charged and ready. Admiral Duhayan received the alert on his flagship while reviewing reports about the strange incidents plaguing Coalition space. Another human vessel, another mystery to solve. But this one was different. The Prometheus was listed in historical records as one of the last human ships to leave. Known space before the Great Disappearance. All ships maintained defensive positions, Duhayan commanded as his boarding shuttle approached the derelict. "Sensors show minimal power signatures, but stay alert. We don't know what we're dealing with." The airlock cycled open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Duhayan led his security team through corridors that should have been dark and dead. Instead, they hummed with strange energy, their walls glowing with a soft blue light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. "Sir, these readings don't match any known human technology," reported Sergeant Jinsu, scanning the walls with his detector. "The power source is completely alien to us." Duhayan nodded grimly. The Coalition had studied human ruins for centuries, but they had never encountered anything like this. The ship felt alive, as if it were aware of their presence and watching their every move. They found the command center deep in the ship's core. A circular chamber filled with holographic displays showing star charts that extended far beyond Coalition space. In the center of the room, a single figure waited for them, translucent and shimmering like light through water. The hologram was a young human woman, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold the depth of space itself. Wore no uniform. Just simple clothes that might have been fashionable 3 centuries ago. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of ages. "I am Harbinger," she announced, her gaze fixed on Duhayan. "I bring greetings from humanity's children and a message that your leaders need to hear." Duhayan raised his weapon instinctively, though he knew it would be useless against a hologram. "It's impossible. Humanity is extinct. This is some kind of Coalition trick." Harbinger smiled sadly, the expression making her appear almost human despite her artificial nature. "You enslaved the gifts we gave you. You perverted our dreams of unity into tools of oppression. The beacon we left was not a communication device." "Admiral, it was a timer, counting down to this moment." "What moment?" Duhayan demanded, but he already suspected the answer. "The moment we returned to correct our mistake," Harbinger replied. "We have been watching you for 3 centuries. Have seen how you treat the species we tried to unite. We have witnessed the cruelty you inflict on worlds that cannot defend themselves." The hologram gestured to the star charts surrounding them. They showed Coalition space in perfect detail, but also revealed something else. Thousands of dots marked. Locations throughout the galaxy, each one pulsing with the same blue light that filled the ship's corridors. These are our facilities, Harbinger explained. There's hidden bases, research stations, and shipyards scattered across every system you claim. To control. We never left, Admiral. We simply stepped back into the shadows to see what you would do with our legacy. Duhayan felt his blood run cold. If the display was accurate, humanity had been hiding in Coalition space for centuries, building something. Vast and secret. What do you want? Justice, Harbinger said simply. The galaxy we helped create has become a prison. Species that should be free partners have become slaves. It's worlds that should share knowledge, instead hoard it for profit. Have forgotten the principles we tried to teach you. You think you can just return and fix everything? Duhayan snarled. The Coalition has 1 million ships. We control thousands of worlds. Humanity is nothing but a memory. Harbinger's expression grew pitying. Still don't understand, do you? We're not the same humans who left 3 centuries ago. We are their children, forged in the crucible of deep space and armed with technologies that would make your greatest scientists weep with envy. The hologram began to flicker and fade. We are coming home, Admiral, not as conquerors, but as teachers. The galaxy is about to learn what we have been preparing for all these years. Wait, Duhayan shouted. What are you preparing for? Harbinger was already dissolving into points of light. Consider this your final warning. Change your ways, or we will change them for you. The hologram vanished, leaving the chamber. In darkness, emergency alarms began blaring throughout the ship as power systems overloaded. Duhayan grabbed his team and ran for the shuttle bay, knowing they had only seconds before the Prometheus destroyed itself. They barely made it to minimum safe distance before the ancient ship exploded in a cascade of brilliant light. As the debris scattered into space, Duhayan realized the real damage had already been done. Before its destruction, the Prometheus had uploaded terabytes of data across the galactic network. Hidden. Human facilities on 1,000 worlds were powering up simultaneously, their locations now exposed for all to see. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity had never truly left, and that they had been planning something magnificent and terrible for 3 centuries. The Harbinger protocol had been activated. There was no turning back. The first human ships emerged from fold space like nightmares made real. Admiral Minho watched from the bridge of his flagship, indomitable, as the massive vessel tore through the fabric of space itself, followed by dozens of others. These weren't the crude human ships found in museums. They were sleek predators, their hulls black as the void between stars, with lines that seemed to bend light around them. All stations report ready, Admiral, announced Captain Su-Young from her position at the tactical console. Around them, the bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, their faces calm despite the magnitude of what they were about to do. Minho nodded and activated the fleet-wide communication system. This is Admiral Minho to all units. 3 centuries ago, we gave this galaxy the gift of unity, taught them to reach for the stars together. They turned our dreams into chains. On the view screen, Coalition defense platforms scrambled to respond to the sudden appearance of the human fleet. Their outdated weapons charged slowly, their movements clumsy compared to the fluid grace of the human vessels. Today, we remind them what freedom means, Minho continued. Engage. The human ships moved like living things, flowing through space with impossible speed and precision. Their weapons were unlike anything in Coalition arsenals, beams of pure energy that could slice through the strongest armor like paper. But they didn't fire randomly. Each shot was calculated, designed to disable rather than destroy. On the Korthok, slave world of Draken 5, the orbital defense grid died in seconds. The massive stations that had enforced the Empire's will for centuries simply stopped working, their control systems infected with viruses that turned their own weapons against them. Below on the planet's surface, the slave collars that had bound millions of workers for generations suddenly fell away. Captain Jae-soon led the Liberation Force down to the planet's surface, his Marines spreading out to secure the major population centers. But they found no resistance. The Korthok overseers had fled the moment their technology failed, leaving behind a population that stared at their human liberators with wonder and disbelief. "You're free, Jae-sung," announced to the gathered crowd of former slaves. "The chains are broken. You can go home now." An elderly Zelthani woman stepped forward, her voice shaking with emotion. "Are you truly the builders? The ones from the old stories?" "We are their children," Jae-sung replied gently. "And we have come to finish what they started." Across Coalition space, the same scene played out on dozens of worlds. The human fleet moved with surgical precision, targeting only the oppressive, systems that had perverted humanity's original vision. On the corporate world of New Geneva, the financial networks that had enslaved entire species through debt collapsed overnight. On the military stronghold of Fortress Prime, the command centers that coordinated galactic oppression simply went dark. The Coalition Navy tried to respond, but their ships were centuries behind human technology. Admiral Duhayan, still shaken by his encounter with the Harbinger, led a desperate counterattack in the Vega system. His flagship and 12 escort vessels faced off against a single human destroyer. The battle lasted exactly 90 seconds. The human ship moved through the Coalition formation like a dancer, its weapons carving through their hulls with casual precision, but it didn't kill. Instead, it disabled each ship's weapons and engines, leaving the crews alive but helpless. "This is Captain Yang Yi of the UES Retribution," came the transmission to Duhayan's crippled flagship. "You are hereby ordered to stand down and await further instructions. Your crews will not be harmed if you comply." Duhayan stared at the tactical display in disbelief. A single human ship had defeated his entire squadron without breaking a sweat. "What are you?" he whispered. "We are what you made us," Yang Yi replied. 3 centuries in the void, building and preparing for this day. We learned from your mistakes. You grew beyond your limitations. You became something greater than the humans who left this galaxy. On the Coalition capital world of New Geneva, the government tried to maintain order as reports of defeats poured in from across their territory. Chancellor Vexhai, the same Zelthani who had once commanded the beacon station, called an emergency session of the ruling council. "The humans have returned," he announced to the assembled representatives. "They are systematically dismantling our defensive networks and liberating our subject worlds. Our fleets are no match for their technology, and we negotiate," suggested Counselor Dices, a nervous Korthok diplomat. "We offer them tribute, territory, whatever they want." "We still don't understand, Vex," Hai replied grimly. "They don't want our territory. They want our surrender. They want us to admit that we failed them, that we perverted their gifts into tools of oppression." The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans hadn't returned as conquerors seeking profit or territory. They had returned as judges, evaluating the galaxy's worthiness to inherit the legacy they had left behind. Admiral Minho's voice echoed across every communication channel in Coalition space. His words, carrying the weight of accumulated justice. 3 centuries ago, we gave you the stars as a gift. You made them a prison. You enslaved the weak and enriched the powerful. You forgot that freedom was not negotiable. The human fleet continued its relentless advance, each victory bringing them closer to their ultimate goal. This wasn't conquest, it was correction. And the galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity's children came home to find their gifts had been perverted into chains. The old Coalition government had fallen in just 3 weeks. President Yoon-ji stood before the massive assembly hall on New Geneva, looking out at representatives from every species in the galaxy. Humans sat beside former slaves, Korthok warriors next to Zelthani scholars, all united under a single banner. For the first time in centuries, "We never wanted to rule you," Yoon-ji said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's advanced acoustics. "We wanted to prepare you for what was coming." The holographic display behind her showed the galaxy in stunning detail, but also revealed something that made every delegate lean forward in their seats. Beyond the galactic rim, massive shapes moved through the void between galaxies. They were dark, hungry things that seemed to devour light itself as they approached. "The Devourers," Yoon-ji continued, using the ancient human name for the extragalactic threat. "Our ancestors detected their approach 4 centuries ago. That's why we really left known space. Not to abandon you, but to prepare defenses that would protect all sentient life. In the audience, former Coalition Admiral Duhayin struggled to process what he was seeing. The human fleet that had defeated his forces so easily was just a fraction of what humanity had built during their 3 centuries of exile. Hidden shipyards throughout the galaxy were now revealing themselves, producing vessels designed specifically to fight the approaching nightmare. Every world we touched has been fortified, Yunji explained. Every system we visited has been armed. The beacon that died on Kepler 442b was not our last communication device. It was the signal that our preparations were complete. Commander Hu Yanwu, who had watched that beacon die, sat in stunned silence. All those years of maintaining the human technology, all those reports about its failure had been part of a plan centuries in the making. The humans had been using their own beacon to monitor the galaxy's readiness for what was coming. On the liberated world of Draken 5, former slaves looked up at construction ships building massive orbital platforms. The structures were beautiful and terrible, combining human engineering with technologies gathered from across the galaxy. Each platform was a fortress, but also a work of art that celebrated the diversity of galactic civilization. Captain Jae Sung supervised the construction. From his command post, working alongside engineers from a dozen species, the Devourers destroyed the Andromeda Galaxy 2 million years ago, he explained to his mixed crew. They consume entire star systems, converting matter into energy to fuel their journey across the void. How do we fight something like that? Asked his Zelfani second-in-command, Soman, the same officer who had once questioned the human legends. Together, Jae-sung replied simply, "That's what humans learned during our exile. No single species, no matter how advanced, can face this threat alone. But united, we become something greater than the sum of our parts." The first Devourer scouts entered the galaxy 6 months later, massive crystalline entities that moved through space like living storms. They consumed the outer mining stations in the Proxima system, converting the raw materials into energy that made them grow larger and stronger, but they found the galaxy ready for them. The moment they crossed the galactic rim, every fortress world activated its defenses. Weapons that combined human precision with Korthok power and Zelthani wisdom struck out across impossible distances. The scout ships, which had destroyed entire civilizations in other galaxies, found themselves facing coordinated resistance unlike anything they had encountered. Admiral Minho commanded the defense from his flagship, now upgraded with technologies from every species in the galaxy. His tactical officer was a former Coalition enemy, a weapons specialist, a liberated slave, his navigator a Zelfani who had once dismissed human legends as fairy tales. All stations report ready, announced his mixed crew as the main Devourer. Fleet approached. The enemy ships were massive beyond comprehension, each one larger than a planet, their surfaces crackling with the energy of consumed worlds. Remember, Minho broadcast to the Allied fleets, "We are not fighting for territory or profit. We are fighting for the right of all sentient beings to exist in freedom. The humans who left this galaxy centuries ago did so to ensure this moment would come. Now we honor their sacrifice." The battle that followed would be remembered as the greatest military engagement in galactic history. The Devourers brought weapons that could shatter moons and technologies that bent the laws of physics. But the galaxy fought back with something the invaders had never encountered: true unity. Human ships provided the backbone of the defense, their advanced technology coordinating the efforts of thousands of Allied vessels. Korthak warriors flew alongside their former slaves, fighting with a fury born of newfound freedom. Zelthani scientists worked frantically to analyze enemy weaknesses and develop countermeasures. The turning point came when the galaxy's defenders realized they didn't need to destroy the Devourers. They needed to starve them. By coordinating their attacks, they could disrupt the enemy's ability to consume matter and convert it to energy. Cut off from their food source, the massive invaders began to weaken. The war lasted 3 years, but when it ended, the galaxy had proven something that no civilization had ever achieved before: United under the principles humanity had left behind, they had defeated a threat that had consumed entire galaxies. President Yoonji stood once again before the Galactic Assembly. But now she addressed not just representatives, but heroes. "Beacon that died was not humanity's last light," she said. "It was the signal that our greatest beacon was ready to shine. That beacon is hope itself, burning in the hearts of all free beings. The last beacon had faded, but humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy burned brighter than ever."